Good evening. Going to call the workshop to order. This is a very informal event. We do have a couple little rules to keep this to at least a 2-hour minimum, so we don't get everybody all riled up and excited. I think we were expecting a little bit more. Or these are all the applicants over here to the left, my left. So at this format, we do not have public speaking. This is really just for the commission to be presented with difficult or large problems up front instead of, we can vet it a little bit sooner instead of just having it in one meeting. So it's really for us to be introduced to the project, although I believe that we're all familiar with it to some extent. With that in order, I would like, if you can explain, when you come up and speak, looking for just your name so that we know how to address you and maybe your role. And after that, I would say if you can keep that to 45 minutes. If that's too long, that's okay, but 45 minutes to explain how we got here, why we're looking at what we have, and then that would give us about another about an hour 15 to go over some questions. But that can come here or there. If it gets to be pretty good conversation, I will call for an extension, but we'll play it by ear and see how it goes. So to get the thing going, who do we got up first?
I just want to thank the commission for having us. I'm Steve Barrett, Superintendent of Schools, and we've been looking forward to getting informal feedback. We know the formal session is on April 8th, and so we're excited to have this discussion and use it to make changes that we may need to make for April 8th so that goes smoothly. In education, we call this kind of feedback formative. You know, it's feedback so that we can learn and go back and make adjustments. We recognize that on the 8th, it's summative. It's sort of we have to be ready for the formal process. And I want to thank Mayor Jadwin and the city's team. We met with the team, including Chief Spence, Fred Kauser, Michael, John, the whole team, and that was on February 28th, and we had a really good discussion about all of our projects in Gahanna. Of course, the Blacklick project is not in Gahanna, and the mayor was able to dedicate the staff here for every other Monday at 9:30. We meet to go over things, and we think that is just going to really help the process. It's going to help us expedite things because we know this is a very large project. So very grateful to the mayor and the city's team. We had a very successful working relationship on building Lincoln Elementary, which went smoothly, and we were under budget, and the outcome is great, and we hope to do the same with this project. So thanks. I'm going to turn it over to Dave Jolliffe, and he's representing Shore Architects and us today.
Very good. Thank you.
Hello. I'm Dave Jolliffe with Shore Architects. The architect of record on this project is DLR Group. We're a local firm that's working with the district on all the code review, all the planning submissions.
Can you move the microphone up? Thank you.
Sorry, can you hear me?
There you go.
Felt like it was gonna. So I'll be the one that submits this stuff when it comes to the planning commission for this project, also for all the middle school projects, their renovations and additions. A general overview of the project, I'm sure you are familiar with it. The project will replace the existing building with an approximate 550,000 square foot new building. It has a 3-story learning center section, which they call the Prides. And then it has a arts wing at the north and a athletic wing at the south. In order to facilitate the new building while keeping school going, the stadium, as you know, is moving to the west side of the site. I'm sorry, the east. And there'll be a new amenities building on the west for visitors and locker rooms. That's the small building up in the upper corner there. It's a single-story structure. The stadium, they'll be reusing the existing home bleachers on the visitor side and installing a new bleacher on the home side. Parking for students and staff is on the east. The curb cuts on the north side are remaining, and the drive on the Hamilton Road is being, there's two, one's remaining, and one is being slightly adjusted at that intersection. Currently, there is retention on site for stormwater. There's also detention up near the building and by the parking lot. So that's a general overview. When we probably, if you have questions regarding site issues or more about the program of the building, the DLR team and Kleinger Group, who's the civil engineers here, they can help answer questions that I can't or forgot. So as an overview, I don't know if you have particular questions about the site. I can get into a little bit about the look of the building. I'm not sure what else you want to hear about.
Are you the only one speaking tonight?
I don't
Or
have
just
to
ask
be.
questions?
Yeah, I mean, if there's
Come
a
up.
question, a lot of the team is here. Vasily is here from the construction. They're the construction managers on the project. We know there's going to be phasing on the project in terms of site logistics. And we'll have an early package for the stadium because that's the first piece that has to be built in order to get the building footprint in that location. So, and also to work with the district on their athletic schedules. So that phase will be the field itself, the track and field, the bleachers, and the concession locker room building at the northeast. And there will be some additional site work that accompanies that.
Paul Lutton from DLR Group. I think a big piece of this, obviously, is that we want to keep the existing high school in operation the whole time. And so that's a little bit of what the phasing lends itself to. We'll be moving the field in order to clear the existing footprint of the field for the new building.
45 minutes. You had 45 minutes.
Sure. Well, we can go into as much detail as you like.
Well, we can actually ask some questions to get the things rolling. I just want to state that by the time this project gets to us, as I said earlier, that there's 1,000 decisions have already been made to get to this point. There's really no way that we can come in and analyze the program of the building. We will be looking at the shape of the building, if you want to enlarge on that. And everybody knows where the high school is located, how logistically you could build this project and keep the school running. I mean, that's logically how you determine the site plan. I would guess that there had to be some considerations of moving the football field away from this site at some time. And again, that was vetted, and it was determined by the school board that this was the best location for it. So there's really, on that front, we really can't dissect that any further. But if we can just take questions from the commission then and have at it. And you were Paul?
Correct.
And I will start with Mr. Greenberg to see if he can get his list of 20 questions out.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a few questions that kind of jump around a little bit. I guess, how old is the school now?
I think the earliest portion is 19, yeah.
That's pretty old. So we need to make sure that we're getting it right, because the next building that's coming in here is going to be a showplace for the city. It's an entrance for the city, and it's very important that you get it right, we get it right. That's critical. So is the footprint bigger?
Yes, it is. Due to increased enrollment, obviously, and then the consolidation from Hamilton Hall. As you know, some of the students use Hamilton Hall Clark Hall, thank you. Clark Hall across the street for some academic purposes. We're consolidating all those academics in this one building. And so as Dave said, we're at 500,000 plus square feet. There's a lot of work going into not only the enrollment of the students, but also the programmatic needs from the educational side. And so really worked closely with the district and their administration to minimize that as much as possible. I think that our first swipe was, you know, as always in projects like this, you try to give everything that's requested, everything that's wanted, and then it comes down to real needs and how we're going to accommodate those students and programs.
So is there a maximum students that we can accommodate in this building?
Yeah, right now we're shooting for a target of 2,800 with the potential of going up to 3,000.
Yeah, so I was just going to say exactly what he said. So 2,895 or so, but with the flexibility to go to 3,000.
Okay. So if we ever got to the point where we tipped over 3,000, 3,001, what happens?
So these learning prides that Dave and Paul have alluded to, the circles in the middle, those are extended learning areas, and we could add classrooms to those extended learning areas. So there's 6 of those. We could add 3 classrooms. So instead of having 136 classrooms, we would have 154 classrooms. We don't think we're going to need that, because we did a demographic study and we're in the process of updating that. So in 2019, we looked at all the undeveloped land, mostly in Jefferson Township. We looked at the housing stock on all sides of town. We looked at the multifamily housing stock, and the estimate, our peak growth was around 2,895. We think we're not going to grow more than that, but we have the ability to add more classrooms in case we do. A lot has changed since we did that enrollment study in 2019, so we're updating it this spring. We think in this corridor, the Intel project is going to be significant, and there'll be, you know, a need for even more housing. And so I've been on some calls about that, and it's staggering what's going to happen with that. But I think they said the other day when I was on a call, they're going to need 7,000 construction workers. There's going to be at least 3,000 jobs that pay roughly $100,000 to $135,000, and they're not college degree jobs necessarily. So it's a lot. You know, there will be a lot of significant pricing pressure on this project. There will be. You know, we could exceed the growth that the first enrollment study did, so we have to kind of look at that. The enrollment study we did was done by a group from Hilliard from the Hilliard area called Cooperative Strategies, and it took our enrollment all the way out to 2068. And so we're looking forward to having it updated.
Okay, thank you. I could tell a little story. I went, when Creekside first came about, I went to a public hearing, and I sat next to a school board member, and I said, so this is 5 years ago. I said, when are we getting our new high school, another new high school? And they said, never. And it's been pretty consistent that the population for the students just doesn't justify it. Okay, couple other questions. Why was the color? Why the color that we have on the picture selected? And I usually don't get into color, but.
So that's not a final drawing. We're going to present a number of elevations to the community, and we're going to have a survey and give them some voice in that. So I wouldn't attach anything like that. That's a permanent. It's just it's an example.
But we did take an initial look to do some visual listening with the district to get some sort of taste that we felt was conducive to Gahanna. And so this is kind of the starting point.
Okay, great. If it's just a placeholder, I'm good
Yes.
with that. Okay. The discharge pond, I do a lot of environmental kind of work. Is that the retention pond? Is that going to hold all the water? Has the calculations been done to make sure that all the rainfall on the entire property is going to run to that? And my follow-up question to that is where's the discharge point?
Okay.
I'll take it. My name is Megan Sear. I'm the site engineer with the Kleinger's Group. So a lot of questions there, so I hope I get them on. If I miss any, let me know. First is the retention pond on the south side. No, it will not be the only stormwater management location on the site. We are, as Dave talked about, there's the green area by the building that will probably do some surface storage. We'll probably have potentially some storage beneath the turf field, and then we'll find some other spaces if needed, potentially underground. We're still working through that at this point. Outlet points for the site are on Hamilton Road. There's a connection to existing storm in the southwest corner and the northwest corner. So it currently has kind of two different watersheds that we'll be working through.
Okay,
Did I get them all?
you got it.
Okay.
Can I jump in here for a second?
Yes.
That way she doesn't have to get back up again.
Sure.
Where's the retention now?
There is not any retention on site right now.
So does it just spill out onto the street currently?
It is conveyed through the pipes. There's not any surface ponding that we've observed, but it is all overland flow beyond what the capacity of the underground pipes are.
So how much did we increase the paving footprint?
So the paving footprint, currently right now where the new turf field sits, there are grass athletic fields, but the new building, or the proposed building, is over top of the synthetic turf field. The new parking's over the existing building. So there is an increase, but it's not substantial. We still have to, we'll make sure that we meet the requirements, the critical year storm, the additional 100 to the 10 as well.
So we're solving a calculated problem, basically. We know
Correct.
what runoff is. We want to collect it. My daughter played tennis, and she immediately saw that the tennis courts went away. And I assured her that the tennis courts went somewhere else, and the schedule is different now. And it was just kind of odd to see the blue pond on there when we don't have one currently. Thank you. Mr. Greenberg?
No problem.
Thank you. I'm going to move into a little bit of a sensitive area, which are the neighbors and the football field. What has been done to talk to those folks that live alongside the stadium where it's going to be, and we've seen the letters, we've gotten letters of concern. First of all, what is the difference in how close the stadium is now to where it's going to be, to those homes? And then what has been done to communicate with those residents on potential solutions so that their concerns are allayed?
So let me answer your first question first. We had 3 public meetings at Clark Hall, about 60 to 70 of the neighbors. We reached out by snail mail and by social media to the neighborhood, so we actually mailed letters to homes saying we were going to have these public meetings. One was sort of a workshop. We showed them the 2 different designs, and then they sat down and workshopped some things and came up with another design. And so our architectural firm, both Shore and DLR, were in attendance in all 3 meetings. Each of these meetings lasted 2 hours or more. We had our construction team there. We had our design team there. We had our board members were there as well. One meeting, all of them came to. And what we tried to do is show them that the lighting was going to be much more modern, LED lighting, very little pollution into their backyards. And we acknowledged that sometimes when we have, let's say, even like a lacrosse game or a soccer game, we don't have a big crowd, but we still create a lot of noise. We play warm-up music very, very loudly. Maybe sometimes, you know, on a scale of 10, we turn it up to 11. And so we're willing to kind of look at that and create a memorandum of agreement with the neighborhood that we will be good neighbors in terms of sound. We took pictures. We went to Upper Arlington has a new high school and a new stadium. We're going to put in similar lights. We took pictures of those lights during a night event, and we showed that there's very little pollution at all. And so we also did a sound study. We played Pickerington North in the playoffs, so that last game, a company came up and studied the sound and extrapolated the sound out to closer to where the stadium was proposed to be in one of the designs. And I think the decibel level went from 60 to a range of 60 to 68. And so we showed the sound study as well. We don't think our work is done with the neighborhood. We want to be good neighbors. We want to create a memorandum of agreement. We know that there are people that are very upset, but we did methodical and deliberate meetings, and ultimately some weren't happy because they didn't like the result. The designs that we came up with were A, B, C, and D. A was the safest. We had Armada in Delaware County, a safety firm that focuses on businesses and schools. They deemed option A to be the most safe. And the option that the neighbors preferred, they actually voted on it in one of our meetings, was option B, which put the front door of our building in their backyards. So when you opened up tonight and said that this needs to be a project that we all get right, that it's going to be very prominent, it's going to be on a prominent corner in our city, option B would have not been prominent. It would have been in a corner. It would have allowed for, well, what it wouldn't have allowed for is passive observation. So people driving by, seeing that there's a problem, calling the police, calling the school. In option B, which was preferred by the neighbors, it was the most unsafe. Option C and D put the football field on the street. So kind of where our board office is right now, and one a little closer to Havens, one a little further away. And those two options would have caused a situation where we wouldn't have had our stadium for a number of years, 3 or 4 years. And the cost would have been $3 to $4 million more. And so at the end of the day, building the building most expediently, most cost effectively, and most for the safest result, option A was the best result. But we're still willing to talk to the neighbors, and we will do that. From what I understand, a number of them are actually moving. A number of them have sold their houses and are in the process, and that makes me sad because I think the result is not going to be nearly as bad as they imagine it to be, especially if we can sit down and create an MOA. I don't know if anybody else from our team wants to talk about that, but
So
did I leave anything out? Okay,
before we have to make a decision, right?
sure.
So will that MOA be done?
We can work on it between now and the 8th. I'm not sure it'll be done. I'm not sure what, that the neighbors will agree, but we're willing to sit down with them, sure. Willing to make that happen if we can.
Okay, I'm going to move on from the neighbors and just a couple other things of interest on the environmental side. What sustainable practices are being incorporated into the demolition and the construction of the new school? And if I go back to the question with the drainage, is there any thought to rooftop gardens or other types of things to be more environmentally sensitive inside the building and out? That's a lot I just asked.
Yeah, I think as far as the building design, the sustainability, DLR Group prides themselves as being one of the top firms. I think it was 3 years ago we got rated as the #1 green school design firm. So we intrinsically have a lot of green practices. We avoid red list products, which are products that contain unsustainable or more damaging to the environment materials, et cetera. From an engineering side, we're always optimizing, our systems go and evaluating. Those systems go far and beyond what code requires. We have a group called our High Performance Design Group, which specifically looks at those things and not only works with the architecture, but really the building systems, the longevity, return on investment, those types of things to make the best choices for the district long term. From a construction side, Russilli is going to be obviously dutiful and respectful of any codes that are required. And I think, Frank, I don't know if you have anything to speak to it on your processes per se. But yeah, it's definitely at the forefront of our minds. We're not necessarily going for a LEED certification or anything like that, but quite honestly, a lot of our high performance design standards that we design to are basically there. They're just not checking off the boxes and doing the paperwork, et cetera.
I'll be brief. My name's Frank Pinciotti with Russilli. And one of the things that we did on the elementary schools that we're currently building is hire a dumpster company that recycles in their plant. So they take everything off-site, they recycle, they give us a report. It's similar to what you see on a LEED project, but it's not a LEED requirement. We're doing it at the request of the district to be respectful to the environment.
Okay, so the dumpster, you're going to ship it, all the waste is going to be shipped to a company where they're going to pull everything out of that dumpster and recycle as much as they can? Does that include cafeteria waste?
No, it's only construction debris.
Just, C&D debris.
Yep.
So what's going to be done for the operation of the school for the dumpster and food waste and recycling and all that stuff that those students generate on a daily basis?
Do you want to?
Good evening. Scott Lofton, the business director for the district. We will recycle as we currently do. We're trying to go more to using, less products that we have to throw away, going with trays that we can wash and reuse. The food is going to be a little bit different at the high school than currently. They're going to have 3 spots where students can eat from. It's very forward-thinking to try to, get students to enjoy cafeteria food. It's not the square pizza that we used to get and all used to know and love. But yeah, we will capture as much waste as we possibly can and make sure we recycle everything.
Okay. I only have one more question. When I was looking at the plans and we were talking about food and I saw there was a couple of different places, but where are the students supposed to go once they get to one of those dispensing areas for food? Where are they supposed to go sit?
Yeah, so there's a few spots. I think if you look on the plan, you'll see a horizontal space between the academic wing and the auditorium. That's probably going to be our biggest dining area. That's where the main servery, et cetera, loading dock, all the main food services are. The other food service location is towards the south by the gymnasium, and there is going to be some seating there as well. And then that spine in between, we're going to have both on the first floor and second floor. Again, we're trying to do some distributed dining options for the students so that they're not all sitting in, your plastic seats and laminated tables, but giving them new environments to really kind of mix and blur the lines of academics and social, right?
Thanks. And are the juniors and seniors still going to be able to go off campus?
We haven't made that decision yet, but the goal is to be able to feed all of our students. Currently, we cannot. Our juniors and seniors have to go out to lunch because we can't fit them in our current cafeteria space during the lunch periods. As Paul was talking about, the distributive dining really kind of allows students to have a little more autonomy, and we'll be able to create a little better environment so that it's not just school cafeteria food, but it's more like a Panera type of environment. And the other thing, we went and visited high schools in Winton Woods near Cincinnati. We went to Berea up near the Cleveland airport. We visited Upper Arlington, and many of those designs are like ours. I mean, they're different in many ways, but the whole idea is that these spaces will be used, have 3 or 4 different uses, and they won't just be spaces that are dedicated for cafeteria space that are used like a third of the day, but there'll be multi-purpose spaces where kids on the debate team can gather, or kids on the robotics team can gather. That's the idea, is to make these spaces pliable and for different activities. And so Upper Arlington's design has a very long 200-foot hallway that's called Golden Bear Boulevard. That's where their cafeteria space is, but it's also where their football team watches film. There's a big screen that they come out and watch. It's also where they'll have, award ceremonies for honor students and those kinds of things. And so the goal was to have a space that was inviting, exciting, inspiring, but also multi-purpose.
I guess I would ask one more question in line with that. We're talking about the next 50 years or more, 100 maybe. 100, yeah. What's new and unique inside the building that, other than what you've just identified for students, as far as academics and all that?
Okay, so now we'll use our 45 minutes because we've spent a lot of time working with an executive learning team of teachers, department heads at the high school, our administrative team, our curriculum team, and DLR. One of the reasons we hired DLR is they have a process called BOLD, which stands for Building Organizational Learning and Design. And so not only do they help us design a new building that's inspiring in all the ways I talked about and flexible, but they help us commission it. And so they're going to come in as we open the building and kind of look at the learning spaces and help us keep data on how learning is changing. One of the first things we did in this BOLD process is DLR, Shore, Russilli, and our administrative team. We went out and shadowed a student, so each of us had a student. I had one at Royal Manor, and I spent the whole day with him, just looking at how he was learning. And every 15 minutes or so, I had to upload what he was doing. And so what we want to do is, we're learning from brain research and just how achievement really grows, that learning is relational. Learning is really collaborative. When you have learning that sticks, it's not because you're being lectured to necessarily. It's because you're creating things, you're doing critical thinking, you're in flexible groups with students, and it's much like the modern workplace. And so we want to model that, and DLR is going to help us. We did a presentation at the Ohio School Boards Conference on the kind of learning we're trying to capture. And we want to give kids autonomy, mastery, and purpose. And so the whole point of, we have traditional classrooms, but the sight line into the extended learning area, a teacher can actually see a group of kids from her or his classroom, and she can send a group out to work on a project while she's facilitating learning with another group of students. And we have some of that kind of learning going on at Clark Hall, and it's very inspiring, and we're excited to not just design this beautiful new building, but redesign learning. Stephanie Mooring, our school board vice president, she helps me remember things. We also are increasing our Eastland Fairfield career technical programs. And career tech isn't like it was when I went to school. It's not, you don't just go to career tech to learn auto mechanics or welding. Those are all great things and in high demand for sure. But we have 3 programs at Clark Hall. We have bioscience, where kids learn to do experiments with people in industry and science backgrounds. We have an architecture program, and we have a teaching professions program. And those are all very experiential programs, very hands-on, and we're going to increase that kind of learning. We're going to add more space for career tech. And actually, next year, we're adding at Clark Hall a sports medicine program. We're partnering with Eastland Fairfield, but also New Albany. So we're going to share a teacher. And sports medicine isn't just being an athletic trainer. You could be physical therapist. There's all kinds of branches. And we did surveys with students, and we had, I think, 167 or so students that were interested in that. So this is the kind of learning that sticks when you use your hands. John Dewey, one of the fathers of American education, said, we learn by doing, not by memorizing.
And I just want to add a couple of things that I think, Steve, you brought up really good points. Everything that we do, we know every district, every school has a different kind of outward look and how they want to deliver education. I thought what has been so kind of rewarding from the design side is that student shadowing exercise. I had the opportunity to follow around a sophomore named Sophia and learned a little bit of Spanish in our Spanish class. But you get to see what they experience each day. And I think the most rewarding part for me was at lunch. And I know it was COVID, so we were in your gymnasium. But all of her friends were kind of like, who's the weird guy in the suit? And so she introduced me and really got to talk to a group of about 6 or 7 students, and they started talking about this agency part, right? They started talking about the collaborations part. I think a little bit of what fueled the discussion about distributed dining was what they identified in the cafeteria, the gymnasium at the time, what they liked about it, what they didn't like about it, the options, the lack of options, et cetera. And so what's been really great is, as the administrative team has worked with our BOLD team to kind of craft this, how do we want to deliver? I think a very important part of that whole discussion, and Steve, I think you would agree, is kind of the on-ramp, off-ramp type mindset, meaning that they can deliver their academic model as it is right now in this building, but it's also adaptable for the future. And I think that flexibility piece is going to allow them to grow into the space, however the future holds, which I think is really important, considering it's going to be a 100-year building. So.
Thanks, Paul. I just want to add one more thing that was really inspiring recently. The user group meetings with our high school students, they gave us feedback on the design, and they liked it. They're a little disappointed. Obviously, they're not going to get to use the building, and so but they still gave us some great feedback. When we did the user group meetings with all 3 of our middle schools, they were like, wow, they were just so excited at what they saw, and they gave us feedback, and they were almost in disbelief, and it was sort of awe-inspiring to them and to us. One thing I want to say is this kind of learning is new and different, and I don't think teaching has ever been harder than it is now. So we want to create a long on-ramp for teaching in this kind of space that really puts behavior before beliefs. So allowing students and teachers to grow into this model and giving teachers lots of professional development. We walk in the building. That's why DLR will be with us and help us commission it, because we're not going to be ready on day one. Maybe some of the teachers that teach at Clark Hall in the more experiential hands-on program are going to have to change a lot, but we've had sort of a traditional model at our high school building, and so giving teachers time to grow into that kind of teaching is essential.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for letting me kick off, be the lead off.
Very, very good. I'm going to go to my left, Mr. Hicks.
Thank you, Mr. Schmacka. Thanks for being here tonight and to update us on what we'll see before us as a planning commission. Ballpark project dollar numbers, what would that be? Just ballpark?
Total project cost, I think, is 158 million is what we're shooting for.
Okay, thank you. So as a parent of a current high schooler, very interested in this project. Approximately how many parking spaces will there be? Just approximate. Not chiseled in stone.
Yeah.
I think we can get pretty close to exact, right? It's on there.
Can't read it.
854.
854, okay.
Yeah.
And as a parent of a high schooler that has to drive my high schooler to school, can you give us an idea of how the traffic flow is going to move through the site?
Yeah, really good question. So we've started to take a look at this, and what you're seeing on the screen here is where we are today. And what we're proposing with this plan, if you can zoom out just a little bit, what we're proposing on this plan is that the student parking is up in your upper northwest corner. And so our idea was, do you want to speak to it? Okay, go for it.
So the student parking will be off of Hamilton Road. So the entry that is, there at Gary Lee or adjacent to Gary Lee, students will enter there and then funnel into the lots that are directly to the north and then directly to the south. The lot that's in the upper northwest corner will be staff and parent drop-off. So we're looking at having parents enter in off of Havens Corner Road, go travel west around that lot, and then the drop-off would be there near the front entry. We have some other staff lots throughout, on the south side, on either side of the gym, some future staff on the south side of the southern student lot by the retention pond. And then we have different bus zones throughout the site as well. Majority of the buses will enter the southern drive off of Hamilton Road. They will enter the site, go to the rear turnaround area, and then drop off, and they'll continue through to the next turnaround and then drop off students there in those doors. Pickup will have a couple different spots. Currently, the district has 4 pickup zones, so we're intending to replace those throughout the site as well. There's one small on the northeast corner that's labeled as a bus. That would be for buses that are only exiting right out of the site, and there's only a handful of buses that would do that. Special education buses are also separated. That is the small turnaround there, yes, where Michael's showing on the screen. So traffic is, it is a work in progress right now. We are working with Mr. Moorhead to analyze it. We do know that we have different students parking off-site in different areas, so we are making sure as they come to this site that that's also being incorporated as well with those trips.
Mr. Hicks, that this is a nightmare now. If you're dropping kids off at the high school now, it is really, really tough. We hear all the stories of having to leave home 20, 25 minutes early just to be on time, and you have a 10-minute drive. And so our aim is to correct a lot of these issues by having multiple entries and exits, and to try to really make things, it'll still be busy, but try to make it much more smooth. And one of the things the city wanted us to kind of look at was to try to line up the exit with Gary Lee Drive, and we tried to do that as much as possible. Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Sure. We currently are showing that drive connection will be a 30-foot offset from the center of Gary Lee to the center of the school drive. There is the Veterans Memorial, which is to the south of the school entrance drive we're trying to preserve. There is the school building sign. We can relocate that as part of this, and so we are moving that sign to better accommodate that intersection, but it's not fully aligned due to the Veterans Memorial and trying to keep that intact.
We really wanted to make that a better flow of traffic. We think the city's right there, but we didn't want to have to move the War Memorial. That would have been really, really tough. A lot of people put their heart and soul into that, and it's got a lot of deep and long-lasting meaning. And so, but I think we accomplished the same thing or close to it, right?
Thank you for that. So the stacking of traffic onto Hamilton Road and Havens Corners will be of interest, and how that will be addressed. And if I heard you right, that the parent drop-off is on the north side, that having parents go west on Havens Corners out of the parking lot will be a problem, and likewise, coming west on Havens Corners to turn into the school. So again, no, it's a big challenge, but we'll be looking to see how the traffic flow, specifically the stacking onto our roads, is going to be addressed. A question about the neighboring properties. I think Mr. Greenberg already brought some of the concerns to light that we've heard about, and I don't think there's a solution. I don't think that there is a solution that will be agreeable, and that's unfortunate. We heard that some of the property owners are moving. With a $158 million ballpark project, is there any opportunity to purchase buffering properties? Is that, again, not knowing how the financing works, but is that an option?
That's not in our budget. And the reason is that it's just, with the shortage of labor, the supply chain issues, the long lead time on ordering things like electrical gear switches, steel joists, roof decking with insulation, those are all really, so we have to design this project and then order all those items that I just mentioned and more 14 months out. And so that is putting a lot of pressure on the project, because during the pandemic, those materials weren't being produced, and you have Amazon, and now we have Intel, and everybody in line for the same thing. So unfortunately, we don't have the money to purchase property built into the project.
Okay, thank you. And again, I don't see a solution. And living in Hunter's Ridge, we can hear the pop of the crowd when a touchdown scored. So again, it's going to happen. That's a good thing, because it means the sports teams are doing well. Being a resident of Hunter's Ridge, where the Lincoln Elementary was built, I would say that has been a very successful project. As a neighbor right on the Helmbright Drive, the noise and the construction, it really not an issue. The traffic, not an issue. So, if this one goes as smoothly as Lincoln Elementary, I think it'll be very successful. I did have a retention pond question, oddly enough. So is that a surface pond, like a literal pond, or is it underground, or are we going to have a pond on the school site?
Right now, that is what we're considering. It would be a pond, so a retention would receive the stormwater, but after that stormwater releases, it would still retain water, so.
I see a lot of hijinks in the future, student pranks, but if that's what the plan calls for, I understand. And my last question, can you give us a preview of some variances that you're going to be requesting of us, variances to our zoning code?
The one I know of right now will be the variance to not have the 10-foot wide parking islands between each two rows of parking, based on the quantity that's required for the zoning, for the number of spots for the students. The equation didn't work out, so. But they did try to get as many spots as possible facing north and south instead of east and west, to have headlights across Hamilton Road to the residential area. So, but that's the only one. I think we're still within our area coverage on the site under that. So when we turn it into planning commission, I know, like when we did at High Point, they came back with an item that was that parking island that we addressed with the variance there. So we're hoping for few, but sometimes the review comes back with something.
So one variance. That's your
Yeah,
story.
yeah. They're
Okay.
the setbacks are within the boundaries, and I don't know. I don't know
Good job.
if engineering will find something more.
But this is an opportunity to kind of just loft those up, and you can get some feedback on how to, like, for example, I personally have no issue with that variance request of the parking islands. We have historically, considered that variance for other developments, so that's not going to be a problem. But if you had other ones that maybe you wanted to lob up and get some feedback on, this would be a time to do it. And that was my last question, Mr. Chair.
No, one question, when they were talking about putting it out to the public to kind of get a feedback on the exterior of the building, the timing of that may not jive totally with the submission for the planning review. So I don't know how much of that would be conditional, on understanding that what gets submitted during the planning commission, the brick or the block may change or the color may change. I'm not sure how that's going to work out with the review, but and I don't know if the feedback will change. I don't think it'll change the shape of the building at all. So it would really just be a material and color selection, I think.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you, Mr. Hicks. Ms. Burko?
I just said, a lot of questions have already been asked, but have you done a traffic study? You have? So I know we usually require those.
Yes, we are aware that it is needed. We are in the process of working through it right now. It will be part of the submittal when it is made to the city, so.
Okay, so you'll have it by the time you make your presentation?
Yes,
Okay.
yes, we will.
Another thing I wanted to ask, have you considered putting not just a 6-foot fence, maybe, I don't know if you can do 10-foot fences, but 8-foot anyhow, like back there where the people are, that might, I would think that would be something you'd want to do that would kind of keep the kids out of their yards and maybe, I don't know if it didn't sound at all, but.
I think we are proposing an 8-foot opaque fence in between the visitor bleachers and that
So you're
property
going
line.
to do that? For sure? We have approved, I think it was haven't we done 8-foot, Michael? I think we have. So maybe it could be a little higher. That would be good.
Variance to make it a little higher than 8 feet, I'm not sure, but
Do what?
David said that could be a variance, but we'll certainly look at that.
Right, I know it'd be a variance.
Yeah, okay,
Yeah.
okay,
But I know we have approved that variance at least one other time.
okay. Yeah, sure, we'll look into
And,
that.
it would probably make sense to have a little higher fence.
Okay.
What are you going to do with Clark Hall? Do you not use it for schoolrooms now?
So currently, our preschool is over there, and it's growing, just like we're growing in every other area, so we would need to expand our preschool. We also are going to tear down our current administration building,
Oh.
and we will move over there, and our technology department, which is currently at Lincoln High School, would move to Clark Hall as well.
Okay.
One of the things that is interesting about school buildings is if you don't use a school building at least to 60% of its capacity, then it can be up on the block for a charter school.
Oh.
So we have very little flexibility. We did have it appraised, and it's a very innovative project with the restaurants there, and they have a long-term lease, and so Clark Hall will be full to capacity in a very short time, I'm sure.
That's good to hear.
And we have some in the budget to redevelop it, because right now it's a lot of classrooms, and so they would have to be, converted to office spaces, and we'll still probably use Clark Hall for professional development for teachers. It's a very innovative space.
Yeah, I've been in that. It is a
Yeah.
nice space. What's it going to ask? I don't know. I can go on to Markham, but I might want to come back for another question or two.
Thank you, Ms. Burko. Mr. DeMarco?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Don't want to beat a dead horse, but I'd like to come back to the football field again. Sure. You just answered Ms. Burba here about an opaque fence. I'm not a construction guy. Explain to me an opaque fence.
So it wouldn't be a chain link fence. It would be a solid fence, whether it's vinyl or wood. I don't know if we have picked that out per se
Opaque
just
meaning
yet. Meaning
see-through.
Correct.
Not-
Transparent would be see-through. Opaque would be you wouldn't be able to see through it, right?
Keep the kids out,
And the trash and
And
all
the trash.
shenanigans. Hopefully, yeah.
but not necessarily the noise would go through more than if it was a
Yeah, we've
brick
done
fence
some
or
research
some
and
sort of wall.
Even opaque fences don't do much to deaden the sound, so that's still that's still an issue. But it's some of those other issues. So.
How about landscaping?
Yeah, we're currently working on a landscaping plan.
Let's talk landscaping first, behind the football field, between the football field and the neighbors.
Yeah,
Let's just go there
so
first.
we've done a tree audit along that line. We know that we're going to have to lose some of those trees. As a part of that, we're replacing all of those as well. I think it's been the intent the whole time from the district has given us direction really on all these projects that, any tree that's taken down, we're going to replace. I think the last count, and feel free if anyone knows the numbers for sure, but we're exceeding that current number and the required number by, I think, 30 plus trees from the last plans that I've seen. So that'll be in the submission as well so that you can see what species, et cetera.
Barrett?
Is the current trees there are not in great shape. So we're probably going to have to eliminate the ones that aren't, right? And fill them in with some mature trees to make, and I think you are also looking at a berm and creating
Correct.
a nice space
The
behind.
trees are on your property, not on the residential property?
They're on our
Correct.
property.
Yep.
Would you consider, pine trees or something a little more dense so that even in the winter they're there so that, again, to keep some light out? I don't know if it keeps sound out, but, I would like to see some sort of inside the fence, fairly thick trees.
Sure.
To
Yeah.
try to protect these neighbors.
Sure.
Sure,
Okay.
makes sense.
We'd like to see that as part of your plan if possible. Last thing on this, this is going to be the red herring, is these neighbors, and keeping them happy, it's going to be difficult. We got to do everything we can to separate this football field from these homes and the locker room building and all that. We talked a little bit about traffic already. Is there any plan? Please. That's what we're here for.
If I can just jump in real quick. We are working with a sound engineer to make sure that we're just not blaring the speakers out and causing issues for those neighbors. So we want to make it more pinpoint over the crowd. Of course, sound is going to travel, but we are working diligently to make sure that it's pinpointed onto the stands and down onto the field and not into the neighborhood.
And that's coming from distributed sources, I think, is the kind of
Yes.
scheme that we're going with. So instead of one big set of bleachers trying to cover a big area, it's several speakers trying to cover the bleachers in a big area. It's several speakers at a lower volume, focused more at the field. So,
And you mentioned earlier, same thing with the lighting.
correct, right?
You talked a little bit about moving or reusing one of the bleachers. It's going to be relocated. It's portable? Yes. Or semi-portable?
Home bleachers are relatively new, the current home bleachers, so we're going to reuse those.
In the new location. We talked a little bit about traffic earlier. Are there any plans to widen Havens Road? I don't think it's your responsibility, but it's
Yeah.
part of the project.
No, it's not currently part of the project, and I shouldn't say currently. I don't think we could afford to do it if we wanted to. This project's budget is really tight, given the supply chain issues, the labor issues, and just the amount of building that's happening in our area. There's a lot of pressure points on building it, and just, getting everything we need in the new building.
Okay.
How long will it take you to complete the project?
We plan to move into the building in the fall of '24 for the 24-25 school year. It's kind of scary because that's when Intel plans to finish. They plan to finish in 2025. So it's
25. Fall
what's
of
that?
25.
fall of '25. Yeah. Sorry, I meant fall of '25 for the 25-26 school year. I just gave Frank a heart attack. Sorry about that.
Can I ask another question about traffic, Mr. Chair?
Yes.
When I was lucky enough to drive my kids to Lincoln High, there was always a Gahanna policeman in the street directing traffic, which made it go great. Then 2 years later, that person was gone. We even gave him a nickname because he was so good at getting us in and out. So are you planning to use any help getting people through the system to make the traffic flow work better?
Not planned on that right now. We have a great relationship with our police department. We partner with the police department on 3 student resource officers, and they are not in the memorandum of agreement. They are not, part of their job is not to direct traffic in the street.
All right. Tell me what's going on in the southeast corner here, where those triangles are.
Yeah, so this latest site plan, we were able to free up some green space there for shot put and discus. And so those are the kind of areas required and clearances required for those activities.
Okay. I actually was thinking that's what it looked like, but I wasn't sure. You talk a little bit about Intel. I don't think it has anything to do with our committee, but just out of curiosity, you gonna be creating any new programs for a student who might want to go work and make the $135,000 a year at Intel?
Right now, Kenny McDonald and his team, they're organizing some possible visits with Intel to talk about what has happened in Phoenix and what has happened in Portland with, I think, Samsung's in Phoenix and the different things that they've done to create high school programming to get the employees they need. And in our current employment environment, companies are going to have to be more active, and Intel, I think, understands this in terms of training. So what we hope to do is with New Albany and Westerville and Gahanna and Northridge and Licking Heights and all the schools that sort of are in this corridor, partnering with them on programs, partnering possibly with Eastland Fairfield to create programming so that kids can go and work there straight out of high school, maybe partnering also with Columbus State to get an associate's degree, but they're not thinking at this point that those are 4-year degree jobs. They're maybe 2-year degree jobs, and maybe with the appropriate programs at the high school level, kids can go and work there right out of high school. So we plan to partner with them to, listen to them in terms of building a curriculum and presenting them with what they need.
Great. I think it's critical, and it certainly will make Gahanna better. Last question I have, Mr. Barrett, you're retiring. We got this project coming on. What's the plan? What's the plan? I should ask Daphne.
Our Board of Education is currently engaged with a executive search firm called Finding Leaders, and they're in the process of, I think we're going to meet as soon as Monday to talk about the search, and there's a lot of interest in the job, it's going to be an exciting thing for anybody who wants to be a superintendent. This is a great project to become a part of, and we have a great internal team with our Scott Lofton, who you heard from tonight, Jill Elliott, Aaron Winter in our business office. They were instrumental in making sure Lincoln Elementary got pulled across the finish line, and they are immersed in user group meetings and all kinds of engagement. And so I think we'll find a good replacement for me, and I think it'll go very smoothly.
Good. I'll just wrap up, turn it back to the chair by saying, again, anything and everything we can do to protect these neighbors is going to be critical to our approval of this project.
Thank you, Mr. Sarkman. The other architect is not here tonight, so I'm glad I have an hour to vet this. And I would like to divide it up into 3 sections here, starting with the football field. I think we're going to do our kids a disservice. I would like to see that whole sports complex be a vocational school. So that is my position in the start. There is a pride. I live 1,800 feet away from the school. There is a pride. I love hearing touchdown Lions. I don't have an issue with that, living close to that. But let's talk about the entrance, that since I have been in Gahanna, we have spent money on putting a nice little marquee out front with the lion's head. Are we reusing that?
We haven't talked about that. You're talking about where our digital sign is, or?
No, the entrance, the stone
Oh, the stone entrance,
features
yeah.
and the entrances that we have.
Oh, sure. I mean,
It
we'll
doesn't look
find.
to be like a prominent entrance on a plan here to get to the football stadium.
Yeah.
Are you anticipating it to go through the school during football night?
Do you want to talk about
Yeah,
that a little
so
bit? But we do, to answer your question, we will use that, and we haven't talked about the one-room schoolhouse, but our plan was to try to move it to the South High Street for next to Lily Pond. But the price point for that became just out of sight, and so we found a cheaper way to move it on campus. And the people who are very involved in that project and in building the one-room schoolhouse are very invested in keeping it on campus. And so, so anything we can reuse that has historical value, that is very much part of the pride of the high school, we will try to keep.
So when you say that, the original building, the original high school, has an entrance, stone entrance. You reuse it somewhere. I'd like to see that in the presentation, along with the entrance to the football field. The schoolhouse is cute. I remember that being moved over here. I really don't like to see how, in my time, we have a new football field, and we're ripping it up and moving it next door. That puzzles me. So since we are, and I understand that, and as we look at the football field and I think about sound, I am projecting to you. I am facing you. More fans are going to be from Gahanna. Why are my stands facing where we don't want to project the sound? Now, I understand that we switched it recently because of the sun setting. Well, I'm sorry. We have the 30% of everybody, any project you got, 30% people are going to hate it, 30% are going to like it, 30% are not going to have an opinion about it. But the contention that we have with the football field, what if we flip that? Now, if you flipped it, I don't know, I'm not a sound engineer, it just makes sense to me that the majority of the people screaming out west would help the people to the east. Talking about sound, and I know there's a budget restraint on this, that opaque fence is going to do absolutely nothing. Give me a sound barrier. If you look at it, I don't know how the numbers are going to work out. This is a difficult position, just being an architect and looking at things and juggling how we got here. I was not involved with it, so I'm just going to throw at you to be patient with me on it. So let's just say we move the home team to the east, and I put a canopy on it. Nobody's not going to, everybody would love that, not sitting in the rain. That would help surround the sound again and throw it to the west. I'm just throwing that out there. I don't know if that was a thought throughout this whole process of just, it's expensive because you're going to put somewhat of a canopy or a high wall behind it, but it's something that I think that's readily available instead of the thought of having the visitors or the home side on the west side and projecting that way. I think you guys can do something with that. Hopefully you can address that, or you just say, Tom, you were nuts, we couldn't do it. Please bring that in the presentation. I will want kind of a solution that you guys thought about that or turned it down.
Yeah, I appreciate the sound comment. I think that's a good point. I would say that programmatically, when we part of what prompted us to put the home crowd on the west side was really the synergy between the building and that, and creating kind of an indoor promenade. We talked about a Hall of Fame, things like that, as spectators kind of walk through that between the academic and athletic wings, having that as an opportunity. We also looked at accessibility and using the building's elevators to get the home crowd up, et cetera, as well as academically. I mean, we were looking at that terrace as, again, outdoor kind of breakout space for those students, right there adjacent to the building, right outside of those doors. So those were all kind of the factors that led into it. The sound is a really great point, not discounting that by any means. But I think programmatically, that's what led us to where we were, if that's part of your
So
question.
you're saying that you can access the stands from the third floor?
Correct.
That's a nice amenity. So the detention basin, we don't have one now. I have an issue, my children walked to the school. When I was younger man, it was a bust. We're giving 700 parking spaces to kids. So in your own words, and as I was looking at it, I want green space. I'm looking for some more green space so the kids can go outside the school. It's like once you're in the school here, you're kind of trapped. Where do they filter? Where can they group outside the school? Right now, I don't know how much green space we have. It just seems like we have a little bit more green space that they go to. We have a very nice memorial out here for our veterans here, and I actually make a seasonal walk over to see Messer, who was a neighbor's son who was lost. Is there a place for that in the site plan?
For more green space?
No, the memorial and green space, but address the memorial
Yeah,
first.
so the memorial would stay as it currently is, which is why we could only, so we tried to address the alignment with Gary Lee, and we were able to kind of move the current sign in order to make it a little bit more aligned, but to make it completely aligned with the exit, it would have required us to move the war memorial, which we did not want to do for all the reasons you mentioned, and so the war memorial won't be disturbed in this project.
In the presentation, make that a little bit more dominant on the plan?
Sure.
Please.
Yeah.
You said in your explanation, we are going to have more cafeteria space for the kids to eat. I don't need that many parking spaces. So I have 700 parking spaces here for the kids. If you knocked out 150, you got your rows to get things lined up. You're saying that the kids don't have to go out for lunch. So can I equate that to you don't need to have that many parking spaces? Do we have a parking space for each senior in half the junior class? Is that what we're offering our kids?
Just a correction, just a little. So the number of student parking spaces, I believe, is around 550. The total parking on the site, I thought, was 854 that we looked at. That didn't include the future 100, or does have the future. So students is 528, staff is 231, visitor spaces are 27, and then we have some other areas there on the site for that additional 58 spaces. So it is not, I don't know exactly what the size of the class is, but it is not intended, I mean, there's passes now, and it would still be passes in the future.
So the school board took a really good thought at saying, hey, we need this many parking spaces and not as much green space, I guess. I would just say, as you're thinking about it, that is a comment of mine. If you can get the street to line up a little bit better, if you can lose a row, make the green space a little bit larger, I just think if you build it, they will park there. If you don't build it, they share rides. The bus system is supposed to work for a reason, I mean, so the parking just seems excessive. The building itself and the location of the building is fine. What is the genesis with the circular juxtaposition that you got here? Sell me on it.
Yeah, no, great question. So as we were developing the plan, I think a lot of what we talked about is that, given those students agency, given the teachers options for those classes to learn, many schools over the last 15, 20, even 25 years have started to create those kind of collaborative spaces outside of the classrooms. We looked quite extensively and have done, honestly, some rectangular ones, right? So either larger hallways that are double loaded, kind of your standards, et cetera. What we've found is that those collaborative spaces get broken up into smaller uses, and so they're not as community or not able to be fed by as many classrooms. And so as we started going down this and working with administration and how they wanted their classrooms to interact, et cetera, we really wanted to maximize the sharing of those collaborative open spaces. And as part of that, too, was we were trying to condense our square footage, right? So as you add these additional square footages that aren't in your what I'll say, traditional kind of programmatic, outlines for a school, but something a little more forward-facing, a little more future-facing, keeping those square footages in line. And so we did a ton of kind of calculations between flexible learning areas, classroom square footages, circulation space, all of this, and how can we condense that? How can we maximize the frontage for those classrooms, as well as keep the footprint of the building condensed, right? So I think another thing we looked at was kind of the exterior linear square footage of exterior wall. And they all started to lean. I think the genesis was quite honestly academically driven, but as we started looking at the numbers, et cetera, it only kind of supported that case from a cost standpoint and accessibility standpoint. Steve?
Well, so most designs start with a bubble diagram. I'm
Right.
not sure if a lot of people don't understand that, and a circle is actually the most efficient use of space.
Right.
But in a classroom, is there anything like that in Central Ohio that you can send a parent over, excuse me, and say, hey, we're going to have a very unique shaped classroom to our benefit?
Important to us to have 4 walls on a classroom, a more traditional space with the ability to use these extended learning areas. And so I talked about the long on-ramp for teachers to train them in these kind of inquiry-based, problem-based, project-based, collaborative learning. And so I think it's important to note that each classroom will have 4 walls. But we wanted the sight lines from the classroom. If the teacher wanted to have a collaborative group with a group of kids, like 4 or 5 kids outside, that the teacher could actually have a sight line to those students. And what we saw when, what we saw when we went to other school districts to see these extended learning areas, they were more like library spaces that you had to check out, and they didn't organically necessarily flow from the classroom or have a direct sight line from the classroom. And so what we wanted to do was be able to use those at the drop of a hat and not have teachers have to sign up for those spaces, that on the spur of the moment, they could make that decision for student learning. The other thing we looked at was the being able to have these spaces for multiple uses. Maybe it's a string quartet. Maybe it's the debate team. Maybe it's the football team watching film, or the basketball team, going over, having a study table. There's a lot of different ways we wanted to use these spaces, which is why we don't have a dedicated cafeteria space, and we have spaces that can be used in a distributed dining format. So what we did was we saw a lot of fabulous, innovative high schools, Winton Woods, Berea, Upper Arlington. We actually went out of state and saw another in Canyon View, which is in the Phoenix area. And we wanted to kind of take the best of all those worlds and create a space that that really kind of favors what we've been doing in the BOLD process with teachers, with administrators, and so on.
So with a unique space like that, it's expensive. There's not a square right angle to make something. It is very dynamic looking. Again, it is a very difficult challenge. It looks good. It looks like it functions. The school board seems to be very excited about it. I have to take the leap of faith that this is going to work. I can visualize what that is, but a lot of the people in the community cannot. I'm sure they look at this plan and go, man, if it was just a little bit more simpler, we could save a little bit more money on it. And your flexibility in the long run might be a little bit easier in case things do change, in case the learning vision that you have requires change over time. So having said that, it's got to be pretty. So the exterior skin that you presented earlier, I think was a good first shot. I would really make it a little bit more dynamic, because it's not dynamic right now with all the slit windows that you have. I think you have an opportunity to complement the plan, maybe change the material of that portion, separate that from the rest of the building. It looks like it's brick currently.
Correct.
So there's different change of material between the learning pride. So this is not, if an elementary school child looked at this, oh, that's a paw print. Is that where that came from, or what was the genesis of that? Just purely
yeah.
program and,
It really stemmed, the genesis, the beginning genesis was the program, and to Steve's point, just the ability for all of those classrooms to use that flexible space. I think it's important, to Steve's point about the four walls of the classrooms, they are slightly narrower on the inside, but it's minimal. The really dynamic space is that open, flexible area.
well, the open well that you have there, the open little
Yeah.
courtyard that you have, the existing school has a couple of them. And I think it's nice to be able to look over that. I think that is a nice feature to have. Just a practical thing, again, being here and saw the money of the photo cells that went up on the roof. We are reusing those.
Talking about that, we have a contract with the company about where to place those, and I don't know, Scott, did you want to say anything about the solar? Still working through it. Yeah. So yeah, we will reuse what we can use. I want to address something, if it's okay with you. I think what you addressed was building in round is a little more expensive. Is that
Yes.
true?
Yes.
So do you want to talk, Paul, for a minute, that we're not going to necessarily be using steel beams and bending them, but there's a way to use them at more right angles that is more traditional and not that complicated?
Yeah,
I hope I'm right about that. I don't know.
Yeah,
I-
so
we talked
our
about it.
column layout and our column grid is much more rectangular than what the exterior envelope appears to be. And so we're really just using some outriggers from those top beams, allowing the deck to create that circle. We do have a bent angle to catch that decking at the top.
So
and at the
during your
floors.
presentation here, I would like to see
Sure.
that plan.
Oh, sure.
Because people need to visually see that. So I'm giving you a tip of what you need to show.
Sure.
It's good. I'm
That's
glad
helpful.
you brought it up,
Yeah.
because it does look like a very expensive thing to build, and I think we have a creative way to address that.
Yep.
I'm trying to, where's he at?
He's on,
Spring break?
He's in Florida.
He's in Florida? I'm trying to think of where he's sitting and what he would be asking about in,
He's on the beach with his second
He's on the
margarita right
beach.
now.
Yeah, our district is on spring break this week, so a lot of people are out of town.
So the sustainability of electric cars. Are we having any stations at all? Is there any money? I know we were talking about sprinkling some around the city. Is there any here planned for the school?
We have not addressed that yet. We saw the city electrical outlets for cars that go in recently, and it's something we should address as more people are buying electric cars. So, yeah, we'll address that.
Thank you. For presentation, I got 158 million. Just some simple calculation. I'm $52,000 per student if I just use 3,000 students in here. If you look at the population of Gahanna, and it's about $4,500 a person. So my wife and I, we're $9,000, $10,000. I don't think that that's asking too much on that level. And in doing so, if you can make the presentation of the breakdown of what the school cost versus the parking in the football field, I think that will help alleviate some of the questions that you're going to get from the public. And outside that, is there any other comments? Mr. Greenberg?
Yeah, I got a little confused when I was looking at the plan and the building right there on the left, the circular. Is the 3 floors identical? Or is that on each floor, classrooms, everything is the same?
Very close.
Going up the stairs?
Very close. Yeah, we do have some adjacencies. We have a learning stair between the first floor and second floor, which kind of opens up to the media center. There's some programmatic things around the courtyard that are slightly different, but more or less, it's all academic wings. The science rooms are stacked, et cetera.
So will we see that on plans when you?
Yep, you'll see all 3 floor plans for sure.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, Mr. Hicks.
Thank you. So a couple follow-up questions. The first is, Mr. Blackford, if you could go back to the site plan slide. The southwest where it says, I think, 168 parking spaces. What's there now? It kind of feels like it's coming right over into the building. And how was the buffering between that and City Hall? Could you describe that?
Those 168 spaces are currently where the district office is located in the maintenance building. So those spaces have not been identified specifically, staff, student, it's more likely staff than students, but that's where that is. There is not, landscaping will, give way to that buffer, but nothing specific other than that.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And then I have sort of a timeline question. You've thrown out, we started the presentation with a date of April the 8th. To me, that seems aggressive. And again, I can't reiterate enough that this purpose of this workshop is for you to get kind of take the temperature of the Planning Commission on what you're going to bring before us before you actually bring it before us. So that way you know that, hey, a parking buffer is probably okay. You're not going to get a lot of pushback, and even a fence variance probably would be supported. But if you come back with 15 variances, we're going to be surprised, and you don't know how we're going to react. What is, and I'm going to ask Mr. Blackford a question about the typical timeline of, and when might the Planning Commission see plans or applications?
Sure. When I think earlier,
Red light on? Is the red light on? You'll need a red light.
so I think earlier in the evening, April 8th was mentioned. I think that's the anticipated application submittal to the Department of Planning, not a planning commission hearing date. Typically, this is a large project, there's a lot that needs to be done. We talked about some of the stormwater elements, and traffic studies take a long time, and a lot more of that to be done in this project than most. That increases timeline, a few months, 3-4 months from application submittal to a planning commission meeting is fairly typical. Again, a lot of the review from some staff is the same on the project size than another, but probably the variables there are the public hearing, the traffic study.
Thank you.
So did he say August? Seems realistic.
Yeah, I'd say July or August.
Could just point out one thing. Michael, if you could pull the design down. So the field house was flipped and on Havens Corners. And we had a meeting with the Parks Board. We've talked with the city about this. And so what we decided to do was flip it to make it adjacent to the city lot. So I know the city has some plans for this property, and so we wanted to, it was a request from the Park Board to do that, and that was pretty easily done.
Mr. Barrett, where are you referring to?
So if you look at the field house down at the bottom here, that was on Havens Corner in one iteration of the design, and we had a meeting with the Parks Board, and they requested that we flip it and move it from Havens Corners down here, and then put, what was here instead was the Performing Arts Center. And so what we did was we just reversed them.
And what was your reason for doing that?
The Parks Board requested it to be adjacent to this property. And it was pretty,
To the City Hall property?
what's that?
To the City Hall
City Hall
property?
property, right.
Because of extra parking on weekends?
Some partnership. So one of the things we would like to think of the field house for is a place where It's not just a 9-12 facility, that it's a facility, when you look at Olentangy and Hilliard and other places, they use their field house, morning, noon, and night. And we would like to see that be, one of the things parents would tell us in the coffees we had leading up to this bond issue is we go to Marysville, we go to Dublin, we go to Hilliard, they have field houses, our kids play in nice spaces, and then we come here, we don't have anything to use. So that was one of the motivations for that.
Very good. Are you tapping?
Steve, can you give Michael your microphone for a moment?
He's breaking everything you're giving him.
We received feedback that people watching online could not hear Mr. Blackford, so they asked to repeat his comments.
Looks like this mic is live. So to answer the question again, maybe I'll do a better job this time. So the April 8th date that was thrown out, again, I believe that was for submission of the various applications to the Department of Planning, not a anticipated date before Planning Commission. Again, it's a few months. The biggest variable to this is probably going to be the traffic study and the back and forth that that's going to require. But again, a July or August Planning Commission date, that sounds pretty reasonable in my experience. That could be a possibility, yes.
So let's just think about this in the current economy that we have. When do you want to break ground?
My turn.
So breaking ground on the stadium would be just after Labor Day is our plan. We wanted to do it a little bit sooner, but then when we talked with some of our senior athletes, they would like to do senior nights. We're going to be able to play some soccer games and football games in the current stadium, turn it over to Russilli Construction. I think Labor Day might be September 5th, so right after Labor Day. And that's when we would like to break ground on the stadium, and that project would be about a year. And then we have Frank can talk a little more deeply about the timeline.
Steve, I just wanted to remind you, we were able to let the team play a few games in the existing stadium, but we were starting construction August 2nd. Yeah, so the construction would start August 2nd on the stadium, but the teams were able to continue to use the existing stadium. Once they vacate the existing stadium, we can move in and start demolition after Labor Day of the existing stadium. So appreciate you letting me add to that.
Do you want to talk about, do you have other questions about the timeline?
Yes.
Okay.
2023 is when you're, 2023 is when you're looking at starting break ground for the high school.
2022.
2022. How long is it going to take to do the football field?
12 months.
12 months. So September 22, you're going to start the field.
We'd like to
Correct,
start
after
the
Labor
new
Day.
stadium August
Or
2022
August.
and finish for the season to begin in August of 2023 in the new stadium. Meanwhile, starting demolition of the existing stadium after Labor Day to make way to start foundations for the new building.
2023. So let's just say you got $158 million. I tried to buy copper the other day. Unbelievably expensive. If we received any kind of just preliminary construction budgets, what if we have a 30% overrun? What if it has to be 220 million? Kind of a number. What kind of provisions of delaying this until it's a more favorable economic environment?
Because these are non-taxable bonds, we have a draw schedule and a timeline that we can't really delay it. I think the purpose of that law is so that governmental agencies don't pass a bond issue, put the money in the bank and grow it, and don't use it for the express purpose that the voters voted on it for. We're very worried about budgeting. We're going to have a stress test on the budget at 50% design development sometime soon. we're very worried about, what's happening. I think it was bad enough, and then the war in Ukraine happened, and, that put more stress on the supply chain. There's an upward shift on wages, and so that's creating inflation. And, there's, all kinds of things we could get into that I'm not an expert in, but at the end of the day, we're very concerned about what you're talking about. And then Intel is going to put pressure on materials and labor. I mean, the thought of them getting 7,000 workers to work on that $20 billion project is daunting.
All true.
So I don't have an answer. What if you said it's 158 million? What if it ends up being 220 million? I don't have an answer right now. So, I mean, we're going to try our best to stay within budget because this is what our promise was, but we definitely have our challenges ahead of us that we did not anticipate, when we passed the bond issue.
So during the presentation, that concern hopefully will be addressed in some manner
Yeah.
for the public.
Yeah, we will definitely address that. The third Tuesday of the month, we have a finance meeting, and it's right before our board meeting. They're all recorded on YouTube, and we talk in that meeting about our budget, our operating budget, but it's also a update on facilities. And so we've been inviting the community to that meeting live and to watch online, and we've been talking about supply chain issues, labor issues. Mark Ogden is our owner's rep from Turner Construction tonight. Mike Hilton is here from Turner, and they are helping us sort of guide us. I think we have to be very disciplined. We have to look at the 50% DD budget, and then we're probably going to have to do some value engineering to bring it within line.
All real-world questions. Was there any other comments from the commission?
Can I get back to the timeline real quick?
Absolutely.
Mr. Blackford, who does not have a microphone. We are possibly coming to the commission July or August with a presentation, but we're going to break ground August 2nd. How does that work?
Well, they can't be breaking ground until they go through planning commission and other steps, and those processes can run concurrently, but ultimately it's got to go through planning commission. And again, a lot of it depends on the quality of the submittal. They have great information and materials already. Again, there's that big variable there. My experience tells me the big variable is the traffic study and what that's going to say, and what improvements and so forth, and how that gets addressed. So there's some variables there. But yeah, they can't break ground until they go through planning commission and do several other things, which includes building plans, engineering plans, things of that nature.
I knew that. I just wanted to get it out.
Yes, sir.
All good. Well, thank you very much for your time and workshop. Adjourned.
Thank you.